What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was banished and became the storm that erased Konoha? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. 4 years later have passed since Gaara rescued Naruto from the desert. Naruto reluctantly opened his eyes. He groaned as he realized it was still dark outside. His mind turned, as it often did if he woke before dawn, to the weeks after Gaara had rescued him from the desert. He'd spent the first few days in a darkened room recovering from heatstroke. Naruto looked from the ceiling to the table next to his bed. In the dim light, he could just see the photo of him, Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke from so long ago. Next to that was one of him, Gaara, Kankuro and Temari, taken on his first birthday after coming to Suna. Kankuro had a little too much sake to drink and ended up slumped across the sofa. Naruto had a relapse to his pre-genin days and taken the chance to redesign Kankuro's kabuki paint. After Kankuro had come back round, he'd taken one look in the mirror and spent the rest of the day chasing Naruto around Suna. Naruto sat up as the first rays of the sun appeared over the cliffs and slid out of his bed. He crossed the room to his bathroom and turned on the shower. Naruto stripped off the clothes he'd worn to bed and stepped into the stream of water. He leaned against a tiled wall as the water flowed over him, remembering when Gaara had asked him if he wanted to become a Suna nin. 4 years ago, Naruto looked out over the hidden sand village from the balcony outside his room. Gaara silently opened the door and joined him. "What do you plan on doing?" "I have no idea," Naruto muttered. "If you want, you could become a Suna shinobi," Gaara said suddenly as he pulled a headband with the Suna hourglass from his pocket. "Really? Really?" Temari and Kankuro appeared on the other side of Naruto as Gaara offered him the headband. Naruto slowly took the headband and fastened it around his head. "You are part of Suna and our family." Gaara gave Naruto a rare smile as Temari ruffled Naruto's hair in a sisterly way and Kankuro punched his shoulder. Naruto reluctantly turned off the water. He stepped out and wrapped a towel around his waist. He tossed the towel onto his bed and dressed. His wardrobe had changed slightly in the 4 years since he'd left Konoha. Gone was the orange jacket, and in its place was a longer sand-colored one that just reached his knees. He slung the jacket around his shoulders and left his room. The castle had taken a while to get used to. Naruto had spent the first week getting lost, but after 4 years, he knew almost every inch of it. Naruto made his way to the kitchen and pushed the door open before he sat at the breakfast table. He pulled a bowl of rice towards himself as Temari and Kankuro entered the room. "Another letter from Konoha has arrived," Kankuro said as he dropped the letter in front of Naruto. Naruto recognized the handwriting as Tsunade's as he unfolded the letter and read. "Brat, I know you're receiving these letters. Answer at least one so we know how you're okay. The council being as stubborn as you are. They're not giving us any leeway in their order of banishment. Jiraiya is still the same perverted hermit he always was, and Sakura, well, she would never admit it but she really misses you. But Hinata hasn't been the same since you left. She's been wandering round Konoha like a lost soul. Don't worry, we'll find a way to bring you back. Godem Hokage, Tsunade." It wasn't as long as some of the others but it said the same. Naruto folded the letter up again and put it into his pocket before he turned his attention to breakfast. "Why would Hinata miss me so badly? She hardly ever talked to me," Naruto thought as he ate, until Kankuro's voice broke into his mind. "Are you ever going to reply to those letters?" he asked. "No," Naruto growled around a mouthful of rice. "They're worried about you," Temari scolded him. "Konoha can go to hell." Naruto stood up so quickly his chair clattered to the floor. He turned his back on the pair and vanished in a swirl of sand. "Sometimes I wish we hadn't taught him the Suna Shunshin," Kankuro muttered. "He leaves sand all over the place." Naruto reappeared in the street below. As he walked through the street, he remembered how strange it was when he'd first arrived in Suna to walk down a street without being called a demon or a monster. Everywhere he'd gone in Konoha, there'd always been at least one person who yelled at him. He listened but no one said anything as they passed him. He wandered through Suna in the vague direction of his refuge, the highest point in the surrounding mountains. The area was a large hollow in the mountains, shielded from the wind-blown sand. Naruto had spent many hours in the hollow honing his skills. The results of his training had earned him a title known throughout the Wind Country. His sheer speed and the sand he left in his wake was one reason he had been given him the name Sunarashi, Sandstorm of the Hidden Sand Village. His reputation was almost as well known as his father's had been. Konoha's yellow flash. Naruto had found out the truth behind his father a couple of weeks before his banishment. His mind wandered back to when he'd learned about his parents as he walked. 4 years, 1 month ago. Everything in the archives room was covered in a layer of dust. Naruto muttered something obscene as he put another box of scrolls on a shelf. Sakura coughed as she stirred up a cloud of dust. Naruto took a deep breath and marched into the dustiest corner of the room, disappearing in another cloud of dust. While he was cleaning, he picked up a scroll and absent-mindedly read the words along the side. He paused as he saw it was addressed to him. Naruto thought about it for a moment and pocketed it. He had headed home after finishing the cleaning the archive room. Once back inside his apartment he had unrolled the scroll and a single sheet of paper fell to the floor. He picked it up and realized it was his birth certificate. His eyes went wide as he saw the name of his father, Minato Namikaze, Yondaime Hokage. His mother's name was almost too smudged by dust and grime to read, but he managed to make it out. Kushina Uzumaki of the Whirlpool Country. Naruto shook himself. Coming back to the present, he realized he'd reached the hollow. He made a well-known hand sign and he was surrounded by 6 shadow cones. He readied himself as the clones launched themselves at Naruto. Naruto grabbed the closest clone by the wrist and floored it. He planted his foot in the chest of the next and sent it sailing to the other side of the hollow. One of the clones threw a punch at Naruto. He disappeared in a swirl of sand. The clone was slammed to the ground by Naruto's feet. Naruto swept another clone's feet out from under him, then grabbed it by the ankle and swung it into the last 2 clones. Didn't even break a sweat, he sounding almost disappointed. Naruto sat down in the center of the hollow and closed his eyes. He focused on clearing his mind, on wiping all thought from his head. His body felt light as he relaxed. Naruto realized he must have fallen asleep when he jerked awake as he fell backwards. He lay there, spread out in the middle of the hollow for a few minutes before remembering he was supposed to be at the Suna Ninja Academy to see the new students. He stood up and turned towards the village before vanishing in a swirl of sand. He materialized outside the classroom and cursed as he heard voices inside the room. This should make a lasting first impression, Naruto thought, smirking to himself. All the eyes in the classroom were instantly wide as Naruto appeared in his swirling sand. The Chunin instructor glared at Naruto before continuing his speech. Today is the start of your life as ninja. Over the next few years you will learn the basics of the ninjutsu, genjutsu and taijutsu, and on graduation you will be assigned to a Jonin instructor. Naruto's thoughts trailed back to his time at the Konoha Academy. Dismissed, the Chunin said, bringing Naruto back. Naruto smiled at the students as they bowed and filed out of the room. Gaara came into the room as the last pre-genin left. How are you going to put up with them, Naruto? He asked. They grow on you. Naruto smiled at Gaara. That's what Iruka-sensei said. A sand Jonin burst onto the room, heavily out of breath. Kazekage-sama, Sunarashi-sama, there are a group of ninja approaching the village. A weary party of 2 Chunin, a Jonin, and a wolf-sized dog trudged through the sand, towards Suna. The village walls were only just visible in the distance. The group covered their eyes as a sand-laden wind sprang up from nowhere and whipped past them. The wind subsided as suddenly as it had appeared. The group saw 2 figures standing on top of a low dune directly in front of them, one blonde and one redhead. Kiba's mouth dropped open and Sakura couldn't help but stare. Even Neji found it hard to keep his face impassive at the differences in the blonde. Naruto? Sakura asked. It's been a long time, Sakura-chan, Naruto said. Sakura blinked. It was the name he'd always used to call her, but with little of its former warmth. You just gonna stand there, or are you heading into Suna? Naruto asked as he and Gaara started to walk back towards Suna's gate. The Konoha ninja pulled themselves together and followed the pair into Suna. Once inside the walls, Gaara led Neji and Kiba to the Kazekage Tower as Naruto headed for his refuge again, Sakura trailing after him. How have you been, Naruto? She asked. Good. It took a while to get used to the heat though, Naruto smiled. Naruto, Konoha is in danger. Konoha can go to hell for all I care. Naruto spat. See the headband? I'm a Suna shinobi now. Naruto? Sakura couldn't believe what she was hearing. Konoha had turned its back on me, so I turned my back on Konoha, Naruto said as he looked away from Sakura. Sakura cast her eyes around the hollow as they entered. She noticed the craters with a spiral pattern along one side. What about all your friends in Konoha like Hinata? She's not been the same since you left. It's like she's a genin again, no confidence, only able to pull off simple jutsus. Need I go on? Why would Hinata go to pieces like that after I left? Naruto asked himself. Sakura, let me tell you something. When they banished me from Konoha, somewhere deep down I was happy. Happy to get away from all the insults, always being called a demon. Here I have the respect I always wanted, he said. He sat in the center of the clearing, as he'd done earlier, and closed his eyes. Sakura sat down in front of Naruto and closed her eyes. After a while she broke the tense silence. Sasuke's gonna kill me for saying this, but he wants you back almost as much as Hinata does. When he came to, he did his silent and fuming act for almost a month. He claims it's because no one else in the village can be a worthy opponent, but I think it's because you're his best friend. So he's alright then? Naruto asked. Yeah, still the same Sasuke, Sakura smiled, then turned serious again. We've all been trying to reverse the council's decision or find some loophole. Without success, I see, Naruto said flatly. Sounds attacks on Konoha have been growing more destructive. Soon Konoha will be destroyed. We need your help, Sakura pleaded. Naruto stood up and took a taijutsu stance, moving through a series of well-rehearsed movements. Sakura also stood and watched him. I'll tell you what, Sakura, evacuate Konoha and bring the villagers here, Naruto said without breaking his routine. Sakura snapped and threw a chakra-enhanced punch at Naruto's head. Naruto's form flickered and he disappeared, leaving only sand in his wake. Sakura looked wildly around and found Naruto on the other side of the hollow. When did you learn that? She asked. About a year ago, Naruto replied. I'm heading back to the tower, you coming? Sakura nodded and followed. That night Naruto's sleeping mind was plagued by nightmares. First, it was the memory of his fight with Sasuke. He was facing Sasuke in the Valley of the End. Sasuke charged at Naruto, Chidori flickering in his hand. The Uchiha seemed to shrink as he got closer. Naruto realized his form had changed and he was towering over Sasuke as a perfect replica of the nine-tailed fox. Naruto looked down at Sasuke as he smashed his gigantic paw down on him. Naruto stared at the blood seeping out from under his paw. He lifted his paw and woke screaming. After wildly looking around his room, he calmed, lay down and went to sleep. Naruto found himself back in Konoha and the streets were deserted. Naruto watched, frozen to the spot, as flames rushed past him, burning everything. Naruto looked up as the flames grew higher, engulfing the Hokage faces. The last image he saw was the stone faces crumbling and falling on the village. Naruto sat up in bed again. He saw the sun creeping over the mountains and abandoned any hopes of sleep. He got out of bed and dressed quickly before heading to the kitchen for breakfast. When he reached the kitchen he was surprised to see Neji and Kiba already there. Morning, Naruto groaned, trying to find the coffee. Are you just going to let Orochimaru destroy Konoha? Neji asked bluntly as he pushed the coffee pot towards Naruto. I already told Sakura to evacuate Konoha and bring everyone here, Naruto replied, nearly dropping his mug, but I'm not going back there. Never. What happened to the Naruto who wanted to become Hokage? The knucklehead who wouldn't hesitate to defend Konoha? Kiba asked. That Naruto died in the desert 4 years ago, Naruto replied. You've really severed all your ties to Konoha, Neji muttered. What about Hinata? Kiba yelled. What about her? You dumb ass. I can't believe how dense you are. Kiba growled and stormed out of the kitchen. What's up with him? Naruto asked Neji, completely confused. Neji shook his head and didn't reply. A week passed in which Neji, Kiba and Sakura continued to try to convince Naruto to help Konoha. Eventually the team had to return to Konoha. Gaara, Temari and Kankuro said their goodbyes at the gates. Typical of Naruto to be late, Sakura said as she looked back into Suna. Gaara pointed upwards and Sakura looked up to see Naruto sitting on the edge of the wall. Sakura waved to him and he nodded a goodbye. Naruto watched his old friends leave. He waited until they disappeared from sight, then vanished in a sand-laden wind. Naruto grunted under the weight of the beam over his shoulder. Put your back into it. Kankuro called from behind. You put your back into it. Naruto yelled over his shoulder. Naruto had been roped into the construction of the makeshift buildings for the refugees. Even with the village making as much space as possible, there was still going to be a large overflow. The site was bustling with other Suna ninja, all busy building. Naruto crouched as he and Kankuro lined the beam up with the side of the temporary house. The beam slid off Naruto's shoulder and dropped it into the waiting hole. Kankuro wiped the sweat off his forehead and sat down in the shadow of a nearby building. Naruto joined him. Kankuro handed Naruto a bottle of water. "How many left?" Naruto asked, taking a drink. "There are 2 here and 6 on the other side of the village," Kankuro replied. "I reckon we'll be finished sometime next week." Both of them looked up as Temari walked past, her fan, as usual, strapped across her back. "She's off on her travels again, avoiding real work," Kankuro said, not intending Temari to hear him, but she did. "Shut it, Kankuro." Temari saw the look on Naruto's face. "And don't you start, Naruto." "Any idea when the first refugees will arrive?" Naruto asked, before Temari had the chance to use her fan on them. "Couple of weeks. I'll know more when I get there. And stay out of my room while I'm gone." With that last order, Temari turned her back on the boys. Naruto and Kankuro reluctantly got to their feet again and walked over to the pile of waiting beams. "On 3, Naruto said as he grasped the end of a beam. Kankuro did the same. 1, 2, 3. They both groaned as they hoisted the beam onto their shoulders. The setting sun lit Suna in a pale orange glow. The blonde Jonin was relaxing, lying on the roof of the cage tower with his eyes shut and hands behind his head, after finishing the first set of temporary buildings. Suna was enjoying one of its few rains. It wasn't rain as such, more a heavy mist that hovered around the village. Gaara had joined him on the roof, also relaxing in the mist. "Temari should be back with the Konoha refugees soon," Gaara muttered. "Cancel, soon," Kankuro's bodiless voice said, making Naruto and Gaara sit up. The puppet master landed next to the pair. "I just got word from Temari. She'll be here before the end of the week." Naruto lay back down as Gaara cursed. "Damn it, there's no way we'll be ready in time." He stood and made his way inside. "I want everyone working at double speed. No rest until the preparations are ready." Gaara's voice faded, leaving Naruto to his thoughts. Lulled by the rain and the cool air, Naruto soon drifted off to sleep. 24 hours later, Temari led the first of the refugees into Suna. Naruto studied the Konoha refugees from a nearby rooftop as they filed past. All were disheveled, walking slowly, and each was carrying large bags. Naruto didn't feel any sympathy for them as he watched them enter. He jumped off the roof and landed in the street. One of the Konoha villagers saw Naruto walking away. He pulled a kunai from his belt and hurled it at the blonde. The kunai struck him on at the back, making him stumble and almost fall. He turned around and looked back at the crowd as he yanked out the blade. "Demon!" someone yelled. The village seemed to stop as the shout echoed around the buildings. "Monster!" another person yelled. The Suna villagers all stopped what they were doing and brandished various implements. They moved fluidly, surrounding Naruto. "Leave Sunarashi-san alone," a Suna villager shouted. The man made to throw another kunai, but the Suna villagers readied themselves to attack. "How can you sleep soundly at night with that monster here?" another of the Konoha crowd yelled at the Suna villagers. "We'd trust him with our lives." Another kunai came flying from the crowd but was stopped by a wall of sand. Naruto's eyes flashed red and he made the lunge at the Konoha crowd, but he found his feet trapped in more sand. He saw Gaara walk past him and stand between him and the Konoha refugees. "You are guests in this village. If you cause trouble again, I will not hesitate to throw you back into the desert," Gaara hissed, "and if you ever hurt a member of my family again, I will make you regret the day you were born." Naruto stood as Gaara looked over to him. "Are you alright?" "I've had worse injuries shaving," Naruto smiled. Casting the crowd a final glare, Gaara and Naruto turned from them and walked away. Temari caught up to them and saw the blood on the back of Naruto's jacket. "What happened?" Temari asked in her concerned older sister tone. "A kunai from someone who can't let go of the past," Naruto said, then seeing Temari's expression, "I'm fine, really." "Does their hatred for the fox really run that deep?" Temari asked. "To them, I'll always be the Kyuubi," Naruto growled. As the trio entered the cage tower, Temari grabbed Naruto and dragged him towards the infirmary. "I told you I'm fine," Naruto protested, but Temari ignored him and pushed the blonde through the infirmary doors. She made him sit on one of the empty bed and called a medical nin over. The ninja pulled Naruto's jacket and shirt off before he could start objecting again. "Temari, you know I heal quickly." Naruto told her. "I know, but I still want you looked at," she said. "It's a big sister thing." Naruto shook his head as the medic continued to check his wound. After the medic was satisfied, she stuck a bandage over the wound, then let Naruto redress and go. As he left the infirmary, Naruto's ears pricked as a familiar voice met his ears. He listened harder, trying to figure out who it was. Troublesome. Naruto rounded the corner and Gaara's office to see Shikamaru sitting in a chair. "Shikamaru? What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded. "I was roped in by Lady Tsunade, along with Shino and Choji, to act as the escorts for the refugees," Shikamaru sighed, "and to deliver a message to Gaara." "Bodyguard and message boy," Naruto smiled. "I heard you had trouble from the Konoha crowd." "It was nothing," Naruto replied. Gaara finished reading the letter from Tsunade. He dropped the paper and turned his attention to Temari, Kankuro and Naruto. "They're requesting as many ninja of Chunin level and higher as we can spare," he told them. "I'll pack the gear," Temari said as she left. "I need to fix Karasu, give me half a day," Kankuro said and also left. "I'm going to hit the sack," Shikamaru drawled, wandering away. "Naruto, I won't order you to come, but if you want to you can," Gaara said as Shikamaru left the office. "But what about the council's warning, if I return I'll be killed," Naruto said. "I won't let them touch a member of my family," Gaara reassured him. "I'll think about it," Naruto said and vanished. Naruto hefted a support beam onto his shoulder and half carried, half dragged it towards the site for one of the temporary buildings. He needed to be busy to take his mind off the Konoha refugees. "Need a hand?" someone asked. Naruto looked over his shoulder to see Choji. Choji lifted the other end of the beam and helped Naruto carry it to the site. Once the beam was in place, Naruto turned to Choji. "Decided to help while you're here?" he asked, wiping sweat off his face. "Shikamaru said I should?" Naruto glanced at the sun, high in the sky, and then looked back to Choji. "Want to break for lunch, as if I really need to ask." Choji smiled. "No, you don't have to ask." Naruto led the way through a few streets until they reached an open-air restaurant. The owner smiled at Naruto as he and Choji sat. After a couple of minutes, the owner brought over 2 large bowls of ramen. Both ninjas started eating heartily, and it didn't take them long to empty the bowls. "Good ramen, but not a patch on Ichiraku," Naruto said as he set down his chopsticks. "Do you miss Konoha?" Choji asked without warning. "There are things that I miss. Rain that's not just a mist, the hot springs, Ichiraku's. And I miss some of the people too. Iruka-sensei and Granny Tsunade, pervy sage." Their conversation petered out as Naruto lost himself in his memories. A dust storm was raging around Suna as Naruto took up his guard position at the gates. He coughed and spluttered as the wind changed direction, blowing right in his face. "I hate guard duty," Naruto muttered to himself, spitting sand. Naruto's ears pricked as something moved in the swirling dust. He peered into the storm but couldn't see anything. Naruto leaned against the wall, bored. He'd almost dozed off when something shot through the sandstorm. Naruto's curiosity got the better of him. He cautiously headed into the storm, eyes flicking around. He launched himself at a shape in the dust and collided with a solid wall of sand. Naruto peered through the swirling dust and realized the shape was Gaara. "What are you doing out here, Gaara?" Naruto yelled over the wind. "Something isn't right," Gaara replied. His words were almost lost in the sandstorm. The suddenly wind dropped as sand around the pair heaved and quaked. Naruto ducked as a kunai burst from the sand to his side. A ninja rocketed at Naruto, shedding sand as he did. He made to ram a blade into Naruto, but he was stopped by a wall of sand. "Ambush!" Naruto yelled, flickering away. More ninja appeared from the sand until there were easily 20. Gaara hurled the ninja he'd caught back into the crowd. The bravest ninja charged at Naruto, who flickered behind him and aimed a kick at his head. The ninja whipped around and caught his leg. Naruto was surprised at the speed of the enemy. The enemy threw Naruto into a dune. Naruto growled and rocketed at the ninja again. He threw a kunai and vanished. Naruto appeared and disappeared, each time throwing kunai at the enemy. Despite his speed, The ninja ended up looking like a pincushion for kunai. Naruto ducked a blow from another enemy as Gaara swept up two of the ninja in sand and crushed them. Naruto cursed as three ninja launched themselves at him. He made to vanish, but a massive hand appeared and slammed them into the sand. Naruto flickered, ending up beside Choji. Another ninja rushed at Naruto but was stopped dead in his tracks by Shikamaru. Lights out, Shikamaru smirked as he crushed the enemy's throat with his own shadow. Naruto watched a familiar shape of Karasu land and fire blades into several of the ninja. "Someone order backup?" Kankuro asked as he materialized. Shikamaru picked out the sound headband from one of the fallen enemies. "I don't believe these guys followed us out here," Choji growled. "Here I go," Naruto yelled, pooling chakra in his hand as he summoned a clone. The others knew what was coming and backed off. "Rasengan!" Naruto cried and charged, carving a path through the remaining enemies. The others scattered as they saw they were losing, leaving their fallen comrades behind. Naruto had a grim expression on his face as he walked over to Gaara. "I've decided. I'm coming with you, Temari and Kankuro, back to Konoha." "What happened to never going back?" Shikamaru asked, overhearing Naruto's words. "Things change," Naruto replied. Naruto fidgeted as he waited with Kankuro, Temari, Choji, Shikamaru, Shino and a group of Suna ninja outside the cage tower. He walked away from the group, came back and sat on one of the boxes of weapons waiting to be taken with the reinforcements. "Something wrong?" Kankuro asked, smirking. Naruto didn't reply, just kicked his feet in the sand as Gaara emerged from the tower. "Suna shinobi, move out," Gaara called, leading the way out of the village. Naruto grabbed one of the boxes and merged with the crowd of ninja heading for the Hidden Leaf village. Choji turned to Shikamaru as the person convoy left the village. "Hinata will be happy we got Naruto back," he said quietly. Naruto's ears pricked and he looked backwards. "Speaking of Hinata, why was she so broken up by my leaving?" Shikamaru shook his head in disbelief. "You are by far the densest shinobi in the entire world." The convoy traveled through the land of wind at a steady pace. After a couple of days of walking, the land started to cool and eventually they passed into grassland at the border between wind and fire. The party continued their trek, reaching the edge of the forest that surrounded Konoha. They stopped and set up camp under one of the largest trees as darkness fell. While the camp was being assembled, Naruto sprinted the short distance to the base of the tree and continued up to the topmost branch. He sat on the branch, looking out over the sea of trees. In the distance, there was a pale glow lighting the forest. He knew that light was Konoha. "Am I really doing the right thing?" he asked himself. "They threw me out and now I'm going to help them." As Naruto wrestled with his feelings at the top of the tree, he was unaware that several sets of eyes were watching him. Gaara, Temari and Kankuro couldn't tear their gaze from the blonde above them. "The village better not try anything tomorrow," Temari growled, before she went inside her tent. Kankuro retired a while after Temari, leaving Gaara alone in the firelight. The former Tanuki waited for Naruto to come back down, but eventually he too went inside his tent. Naruto spent almost the whole night up the tree, coming down only after he fell asleep and nearly fell. The Suna party slowed as the gates to Konoha appeared. Naruto stared at the gate. The once solid gates were cracked and burnt in places. He looked past the gates into Konoha. Each building in view was damaged in some way or other. Doors were smashed in or missing completely. Chunks of stone were missing from the walls, as if some huge creature had taken a bite out of the houses. Naruto's attention flicked to the crowd of people marching towards the Suna party, Tsunade, Jiraiya and Danzo in the lead. "Welcome to Konoha, Lord Cage," Danzo greeted Gaara. "We thank you for your help in this difficult." Danzo abruptly stopped talking as he saw Naruto standing between Kankuro and Temari. "You," Danzo growled as he summoned an Anbu squad. "Uzumaki Naruto, you were banished from this village 4 years ago. Your return is your death warrant," the lead Anbu said as he advanced on Naruto, followed by the others. They raised kunai and other weapons, preparing to strike. A wall of sand swirled around Naruto, protecting him and threatening to swamp the Anbu as 3 puppets appeared in a cloud of smoke. Temari brandished her fan menacingly as the other Suna ninja drew their own weapons. "Keep your hands off my brother," Gaara said in a murderous hiss. "Brother?" Tsunade stammered. To say she and the others were confused was an understatement. You banished him, we took him in. He is a part of our family now, Tamari explained, her voice also dangerous. And if you touch him, not only will I kill every one of you, but the alliance between Suna and Konoha will be dissolved, Gaara continued. The lead Anbu gulped and backed off, Gaara's sand also retreating. But Danzo tried to object. I need a drink, Tsunade interrupted. I'm barely here 5 minutes and you're already drinking, Naruto smiled. Some things never change. Tsunade cuffed the blonde fox over the head, smiling. Welcome home brat, she smiled. The Suna reinforcements, along with Shikamaru, Choji and Shino were led to the Hokage mansion by Tsunade and Jiraiya, with a thoroughly annoyed Danzo bringing up the rear. As the party reached the Hokage's office they saw a crowd, made of 7 of the Konoha 12, already gathered outside. Naruto's eyes caught the flicker of purple and white as Hinata hid behind her cousin. With a little trouble, everyone squeezed into Tsunade's office. As you all know, Orochimaru's attacks are becoming more destructive by the day and we can't defend ourselves for much longer without assistance. Anyway, with your help, we can mount an effective counterattack, Tsunade said. Gaara folded his arms. We're ready to do our part in defending. Who said I would help? Naruto interrupted. All the people around the room stared at him. If you're not going to help, then why did you come back? Danzo demanded. I'm not sure myself. Maybe just to see this village one last time before it's flattened. Naruto spoke in a grim tone. Several mouths dropped open in shock and Sakura growled. You jackass, she yelled as she advanced on him. Naruto looked at her with cold eyes and did his vanishing act. He materialized outside the office and made to head out into the village. Sakura burst from Tsunade's office, looking wildly around for Naruto. The blonde walked away but froze as 2 men rounded the corner. The taller had spiky silver hair and only one eye visible, while the other had brown hair and a scar across the bridge of his nose. Naruto started walking again, towards them but froze as he saw someone behind Iruka and Kakashi. The raven hair and almost black eyes were unmistakable, but what really cinched it was the Uchiha fan on his shoulder. Hi Sasuke, Naruto grinned nervously as he reached the trio. Sasuke stared at Naruto, dark eyes devoid of all emotion. Sakura hovered in the background, with Hinata and Ino looking over her shoulder. They were ready to duck back into the office if needs be. Kakashi and Iruka looked like they were ready to intervene if things went sour. Hi, Sasuke, Naruto stammered, sounding like Hinata. Sasuke shook his head and walked past Naruto. Idiot, he muttered as he passed. Naruto relaxed as Sasuke continued up the corridor. Iruka closed the distance between himself and Naruto. Iruka-sensei, Naruto smiled. Iruka cuffed Naruto over the head but not as hard as Tsunade had done. You could have let us know you were alright. Iruka scolded, but his heart wasn't in it. Naruto leaned past Iruka to look at the masked Jonin behind him. Hi Kakashi-sensei. Still have trouble arriving on time I see. It's clear that even 4 years of banishment can't change Konoha's #1 knucklehead ninja. Naruto's smile vanished, being replaced with a scowl. He swept past Kakashi without another word. Iruka and Kakashi looked from Naruto's back to each other. What did I say? Kakashi asked Iruka. Naruto left the mansion and rocketed up the nearest wall. He looked across the rooftops before leaping forwards. Bounding across the same roofs as he had when he was still a part of Konoha was a strange experience for Naruto. The absence of the people in the village made him feel uneasy. Flying past all the places he knew from his genin days, memories he'd locked away long ago burst free and clouded his mind. He dropped down to street level and started walking, passing Ichiraku and the Hyuga and Uchiha compounds. Naruto's feet seemed to be taking him along the familiar streets without any control from him. He passed the academy, normally full of noise from the pre-genin students was eerily quiet. Naruto continued walking through the village, lost in his thoughts. He realized he was in the forest surrounding the training grounds. Naruto emerged from the trees to see the 3 posts and the hero memorial exactly as he remembered it. He flickered and landed on the top of the middle post and sat. Naruto absent-mindedly looked down and found himself laughing at the memory of Kakashi tying him to the post and saying that he, Sakura and Sasuke would never be shinobi. Looks like I proved you wrong Kakashi-sensei, he grinned. He shook himself. I will not let sentimentality mess with my head. He thought. They banished me. They deserve everything that's happening. Naruto closed his eyes and focused, drifting into a semi-asleep state. To the outside world, he could have been meditating, but inside his head, he was putting the final changes to an idea. A bird's call jerked him back to reality. He hopped off the post and put his idea into practice. Forcing his wind-based chakra into his hands, he started sprinting. Rushing back into the trees, he shaped the chakra into sharp blades, one in each hand. He slashed at the trees as he passed, leaving sharp cut in the trunks. He kicked upwards and bounced off the trees, heading into the canopy. Naruto burst through the sea of leaves and kept soaring upwards, carried by his momentum. He seemed to hover in the air as he looked at the village spread out around him. After an eternity looking down at his former home, he dropped again. He landed on a branch and used it as a springboard to take off again. He continued to spring through the trees, getting lower with each jump. Coming back down to ground level, he turned and headed back the way he'd come. Naruto skidded back into the training ground. He swung his arm in a great arc, sending a chakra-enforced shockwave towards the target tree. There was a brief second where nothing happened, then a hairline cut appeared in the trunk and the whole tree slid to the left. It hit the ground with an ear-splitting crash. Impressive power and speed, a familiar voice said once the noise had died away, making Naruto turn. Kakashi was standing a little way off, Sakura and Sasuke next to him. Naruto shut off the chakra flow to the blades in his hands as he turned to face his friends. Not quite the Naruto you remember? Naruto asked. Kakashi nodded, smiling under his mask. Tell you what, Naruto, how about you show me how much you've changed? Only you, Kakashi-sensei? That wouldn't be much fun. Naruto sounded almost bored as he looked up into the sky. Well, what about me and Sasuke? Alright, Naruto agreed. Taijutsu only, and I'll allow you to use your Sharingan. Sakura backed away as the three shinobi took up a fighting stance. Sasuke's eyes brightened to the blood red of the Sharingan as Kakashi raised his headband. You sure about this? Kakashi asked. Naruto nodded and did exactly what Sasuke and Kakashi expected him to do, and created half a dozen clones. Each of the clones smirked and flickered away in a swirl of sand. Kakashi and Sasuke stared as each of the clones rocketed around them, leaving sand in their wake. Even with their Sharingan, they couldn't keep up with Naruto's sheer speed. Sasuke was knocked forward as Naruto's fist connected with the back of his head. Sasuke whipped around and slammed his fist into Naruto, only to have him disappear in a puff of smoke. Damn, just a clone, he growled. Keep on your toes, Kakashi warned. We have no idea what new tricks he's learned. Kakashi took a step backwards as two Narutos tried to kick his feet out from under him, but they ended up kicking each other in the head and vanishing in a cloud of smoke. Sasuke ducked another blow and hammered his fist into Naruto. He vanished. He soon became irritated by the shadow clones and yelled to the still-moving mass of sand. Stop hiding, idiot, and fight me. Naruto responded by landing in front of Kakashi and Sasuke. He charged at Sasuke, ducking to the left at the last minute. He planted one foot firmly on Sasuke's ankle, and the other in Kakashi's back. Naruto kicked off Kakashi and made to slam his foot into Sasuke. Sasuke ducked and his fist whipped out, crashing into Naruto's face. Naruto was stunned for a second, then disappeared in a puff of smoke. Sasuke looked wildly around, Sharingan still blazing. Where is he? He demanded. I think he left at the start. Kakashi smiled as he pulled his headband back over his left eye. He always was a trickster. Naruto made his way back into the village, grinning at having given Sasuke, Kakashi and Sakura the slip again. He wandered through the still strangely deserted Konoha streets. Exactly as if I never left, he thought to himself. His feet eventually led him to his old apartment. He hesitated for a minute as his hand touched the doorknob and then headed inside. As he pushed open the door, he cast his eyes over the familiar furniture and layout, almost identical to the way it had been 4 years ago. Naruto whipped around as he heard someone behind him. Hinata stood in the doorway. Naruto wasn't surprised to see she was blushing. Naruto, she stuttered. Hey Hinata, long time no see. Naruto smiled before turning back to his old home. Hasn't changed much in 4 years, he sighed. I've been looking after it and keeping it tidy. Naruto looked back to Hinata, puzzled. When you left, I decided to look after your apartment for when you came back. Why? He asked innocently. Because Naruto? Hinata's blush deepened. Hinata was oblivious to the rumble of a distant explosion, but Naruto's attention was instantly focused on the source of the noise. He vanished in a swirl of sand. I love you, Hinata finished. Her words floating around the now empty apartment. Sound ninja were swarming through the hole in Konoha's city wall. Konoha and Suna ninja were moving to repel them, and Naruto was watching from the top of the Hokage faces. His eyes picked out the familiar shapes of his friends from the massive crowd of Konoha and Suna ninja. The two armies met and started to battle. The swarm of ninja was scattered every so often by explosions and jutsu. He saw a fireball that could only be Sasuke's doing engulf a large number of enemies as a lightning bolt carved a path through Sound's forces. Naruto suddenly became aware of the sound of the battle. The screams and cries of enemy and friend. He flinched as he heard a female voice shriek in pain. He continued to watch the battle but had to look away as the sheer number of enemies started force the Konoha and Suna forces back. Naruto turned his back on the cries and made to walk away, only to freeze as a piercing scream echoed through his head. He didn't know for sure, but he was almost positive it was Hinata's scream. Screw it, Naruto growled as he whipped around and sprinted to the edge of Hokage faces. He launched himself into space. A grin spread over his face as he saw a sound kunoichi unsuspectingly moved into his path of descent. The kunoichi raised a katana to strike at a Konoha Chunin, but she was slammed into the ground as both of Naruto's feet connected with her head. The second he was on the ground, Naruto vanished and joined the fray. Gaara was finding it hard to keep up with the number of ninja pressing in on him. He swamped a number with his sand, but they were almost instantly replaced by more. Karasu lunged into the enemy swarm and fired blades in every direction. Tamari slammed her fan into an enemy, then whipped it round in a fluid motion, opening it and sending a hurricane force wind into the Sound army. Where are they coming from? She yelled to Gaara. I have no idea, he replied, swatting another ninja out of the way. Another wave of enemy ninja attacked from the other direction, and Gaara couldn't swing his sand around fast enough to get all of them. The remaining Sound ninja were scattered by a rush of sandy wind, and Naruto appeared next to Gaara. Gaara, I think we need to change the field, Naruto smirked. Gaara nodded as a sand cloud appeared over Konoha. The Sound nin didn't have time to react. They were up to their knees in sand before they knew what was happening. The Konoha forces immediately pounced on them. Sakura's fist hit the ground, sending a large team of enemy ninja into the air as Sasuke's lightning-covered fist punched through the chest of another enemy. He tossed the body to one side as more enemies swarmed closer. Before either of them could react, a blonde sandstorm appeared and attacked. Naruto's chakra blades made short work of the swarm. He planted both blades in a Sound ninja's chest, then flickered away to take on a different foe. A Sound nin that had survived Naruto's assault appeared next to Sakura. He made to ram a kunai into her chest but was slammed to the ground by Naruto. Sakura had the briefest glimpse of Naruto before he vanished again, leaving a scatter of sand in his wake. He bounded up a wall and over roofs, catching sight of a green blur that he recognized as Rock Lee and heading towards him. Neji's palm impacted against a Sound nin's chest and he collapsed to the ground as Lee's foot sent another Sound nin through a wall. Neji cursed at the sheer number of enemies that were massing. There are too many of them, he grunted, readying himself. The two shinobi looked up in time to see what appeared to be a humanoid sandstorm rushing over them. Naruto, moving at a speed that matched Lee's, barreled into the Sound nin, sending them flying. A Sound nin threw a punch at Naruto only to have him vanish in a cloud of sand. He rematerialized behind the Sound nin and planted both feet in the small of his back. Neji and Lee watched, mesmerized, as Naruto dispatched the Sound nin. He landed in the center of the street, crouched low as the bodies hit the ground around him. He looked up at Neji and Lee briefly, then vanished. Was that Naruto? Lee asked. I'm not sure, Neji replied. Naruto continued his rush through the battle, picking off Sound ninja right and left. He found a lone enemy and smiled cruelly, summoning 4 clones. Let's see if I can still do this, he muttered to himself as his clones surrounded the Sound nin. Naruto! The clones yelled as they skidded low and kicked the Sound nin into the air. Naruto launched himself into the air and brought his heel down hard into the Sound Nin's face. Uzumaki Barrage. Naruto finished, landing next to the pulverized enemy. Naruto didn't stop to regain his breath, just launched himself back into battle. As he rushed past other enemies, he heard a cry and instinctively ducked out of the firing line. Summoning Jutsu. Bring down the house. A massive toad crashed down into the enemies, scattering and crushing a large number. Naruto's eyes searched for the summoner and found the toad Sannin on a nearby roof. "Hey there, pervy sage," he yelled over the battle, kicking a Sound Ninja off the roof. "Naruto, heard you were back in town," Jiraiya called as he saw the blonde. Naruto looked back to the fight as the enemy regrouped and advanced again. "Pervy sage, you and the others may want to get to a safe distance," Naruto growled, eyes flashing red. Jiraiya nodded and fought his way through the crowd. Naruto punched another Sound Ninja into the ground as Jiraiya helped the ally ninja retreat. Kakashi landed on the roof being used as a rally point and turned to Jiraiya. "Any idea what's going on? Naruto's probably going to do something dangerous and stupid again." Gaara placed a wounded Sand Ninja on the rooftop as he landed alongside part of the Konoha force. Naruto glared at the enemy as he saw the last of the Konoha forces fall back, out of his way. Kakashi and Sakura picked out the sand-colored jacket from a safe distance as Naruto grinned evilly. He aimed his palms towards the ground as the Sound Nin advanced. Sand swirled around Naruto as the others watched. Kakashi's Sharingan picked out Naruto's wind-based chakra in the sand. "You are about to see the other reason why Naruto gained the name Sandstorm," Gaara said. Jiraiya saw the Rasengan appearing in his hands before the swirling sand almost hid him from view. "Sunarashi Rasengan," Naruto yelled as he launched himself forwards, a sandy trail in his wake. The chakra ball impacted against the lead ninja and exploded in a whirlwind of sand, swallowing the entire squad. Kakashi could have sworn it was the Rasen Shuriken from the dome-shaped sandstorm. Naruto reappeared as the chakra-fueled sandstorm faded. Orochimaru paused, looking over the city from the top of Konoha's city wall, to where a distinct chakra signature could be felt. "So the fox has returned," he said to himself. 6 ninja, faces hidden by the spreading night, appeared behind Orochimaru. "Lord Orochimaru, our forces are being driven back," one of them replied, circular glasses reflecting the last of the sinking sun. Orochimaru made no movement as he spoke. "Recall the troops. We'll attack again at first light." The 6 ninja bowed and vanished again. Smoke rose from many places throughout the Leaf Village as the last of the fires were doused. Teams of ninja searched the village, carrying the wounded to the makeshift command center, a set of tents in the middle of the village. The Hokage Mansion, Ninja Academy, hospital and any other building large enough to house the forces having been heavily damaged by the assault. The hurriedly erected campsite had been placed on the site of a former block of houses that was now just rubble. Moans and screams floated from under the white canvas as Naruto carried an Anbu towards the tent. He pushed inside and stopped short, the huge tent filled with row upon row of folding cots and almost all of them held an injured Konoha or Suna shinobi. Medical ninja were dashed between the casualties. After managing to find an empty bed, Naruto looked up to see Sakura and Hinata. Hinata was kneeling next to a bed, green chakra flowing over her hands. She cursed as the green glow wavered and faded. Naruto crossed to her and placed his hands over hers. "Use my chakra," he told her. Hinata looked up at him, blushing furiously, then turned back to her patient. Naruto pushed chakra into his hands. He felt it flow into Hinata's hands and her using it to heal the ninja. After the ninja was healed, Hinata mumbled an excuse and vanished. Sakura wiped her face and hands as she came up to Naruto. "I thought you were going to let Orochimaru destroy Konoha," she said. Things change. The burnt orange of sunset had been replaced by the navy of twilight as Sakura and Naruto finally left the medical tent. Sakura had insisted on checking him out after she caught him. She led him through the menagerie of other tents until they found the mess tent. They both entered and found something to eat. "We have to ration and prioritize the little resources we have," Sakura scolded Naruto as he looked disappointed at the small portion of food. "Patience our first priority." "Why do I suddenly wish a sound ninja had managed to hit me?" Naruto asked no one in particular. Sakura shook her head as she left. They looked around for somewhere to sit. There were other ninjas spread out around the tent. Naruto and Sakura scanned the crowd until they found a group of their friends. Neji, Shikamaru, Ino, Choji and Kiba were gathered around a small fire as they ate. They looked around as Sakura and Naruto joined them. "Damn, I'm beat," Shikamaru groaned, flexing his shoulders. "That attack was brutal," Kiba said around a mouthful of food, even by Orochimaru's standards. Akamaru barked in agreement from behind Kiba. "I took down almost 200 enemies," Lee announced as he appeared, "and I shall do the same again next time they attack, or I shall run 300 laps. Don't you ever get tired?" Naruto interrupted. "Never. The power of youth gives me all the energy I need." "Lee, shut up and eat," Tenten told him as she sat next to Neji. The group fell silent as they resumed eating. Sakura finished her food. She saw Naruto was sitting with hunched shoulders as she set down her tray. "What's wrong with you?" she asked. "I'm cold," Naruto grumbled. "It's the middle of summer, even the nights are scorching," Sasuke muttered. "It may have escaped your notice, Sasuke, but I have been living in the desert for the past 4 years. But the nights are colder in a desert," Shikamaru countered. "The buildings, rocks and sand soak up the heat during the day, then keep the village warm during the night." The talking faded again, but the atmosphere was lighter this time. Naruto wandered aimlessly through the campsite village. He looked up into the sky as thunder rolled overhead. He watched the black clouds massing on the horizon for a minute, then went back to wandering. Looking up to the Hokage faces, he thought about climbing up there again but dismissed the thought. "Knowing my luck, I'd probably be hit by lightning." Naruto saw Gaara, Temari and Kankuro and moved to join them. Kankuro was cursing under his breath as he tried to fix one of his puppets and apparently failing. Temari offered Naruto a water flask as he sat. He took it and drank. "That attack seemed a bit over the top," Gaara groaned. "Orochimaru seems desperate to destroy Konoha," Naruto agreed, handing the flask to Gaara. "I heard the Konoha forces talking. They were in awe of your speed and power," Temari smiled. Naruto didn't react to Temari's words, but secretly he was grinning from ear to ear. He finally had the respect he'd craved from his genin days. But there was still a lagging doubt in the back of his mind. Were they just admiring his power or him? The occasional chirrup of a cricket was the only sound in the moonlit training grounds. Naruto was sitting on top of the middle post again. He focused chakra into his left hand, forming it into the blade. Naruto focused on the blade, concentrating on making it sharper and longer. The blue chakra crept forward. He swore as the edges flickered and the chakra dissipated. "That form of chakra has a specific length at which it can no longer maintain its shape," someone said as they entered the clearing. Naruto looked to the source of the voice and saw Sasuke. He looked back to his hand and resumed his training, focusing chakra into his hand again. Sasuke shrugged and sat at the base of one of the other posts. Naruto gave up on his training and looked into the starry sky. He thought back to when this had all started, when he was back in Suna reading the letter from Tsunade. A random thought appeared in his mind as he mentally reread the letter. "Hey Sasuke, you got any idea why Hinata was moping around the village while I was gone?" he asked. "You really are an idiot," Sasuke sighed. "She missed you because she likes you." "So, you, Kakashi-sensei, Iruka-sensei and Sakura must have missed me too. Why should she be any different? Why'd I even bother?" Sasuke groaned to himself. "I'll spell it out for you." Sasuke stood up. "Hinata likes you the same as you used to like Sakura. And the way Sakura, Ino and almost every other girl in the village like me." Naruto blanched. "How do you know that?" "Please Naruto, she practically stalked you. You'd have to be blind or as dense as you are not to notice her." The blonde fell silent, mulling over what Sasuke had said. The more he thought about Hinata, the more obvious it was. Sasuke saw he'd gotten through to Naruto and sat down again. Naruto thought for a minute more before he smacked himself in the head, remembering Hinata trying to tell him something before the battle. "I am such a dummy," he muttered. "Finally we agree on something." Sasuke smirked, looking up to see a sandy cloud where Naruto had been. Hinata, Shino, Kiba and Akamaru were sitting around the dying embers of the fire. Hinata's body drooped from exhaustion and from depression. She'd finally managed to work up the courage to tell Naruto how she felt about him, and he'd vanished before she could tell him. Akamaru yawned and his ears pricked up as Naruto materialized behind Hinata and grabbed her around the waist. "Hi guys. I need to borrow Hinata." "Thanks, bye," Naruto said and vanished, taking Hinata with him, before Shino and Kiba could react. "Naruto!" Kiba yelled. Naruto and Hinata reappeared on top of the wall surrounding the village. Naruto let Hinata go and she turned to face him. Naruto," she stammered, "why did you bring me here?" So he could talk without being interrupted again. He smiled. "Now, what were you going to tell me this morning?" Hinata's face took on a beetroot hue. I wanted to tell you, I. Her voice failed and she looked at her feet, eyes hidden by her fringe. She felt two fingers touch her chin and tilt her head upwards, forcing her to look into Naruto's face. "I think I know what you want to say," Naruto said. "A friend explained to me." Hinata's face went even darker red. She tried to look away again but Naruto wouldn't let her. Instead, he pulled her closer. She realized he was speaking again and forced herself to listen. "I'm not sure I feel exactly the same as you do, but give me time." Hinata felt light-headed as she realized her face just an inch from his. She flinched as she felt his arm around her waist again tighten. "Go on," a little voice in the back of her head said. "Do something impulsive for once in your life." Hinata gulped, closed her eyes and closed the distance between their faces. Naruto was surprised when Hinata kissed him but he quickly got over it. Hinata broke away after a second, mumbling an apology. Naruto didn't let her go, just kept holding her. After getting used to the man she'd had a crush on since the academy holding her, she relaxed and rested her head against Naruto's shoulder. Naruto let Hinata go and they sat, looking out over the sea of trees. Hinata's small hand found Naruto's and their fingers locked. "Hinata, did you really stalk me?" Naruto grinned as Hinata went red again and looked away. "I should stop teasing but you're really cute when you're embarrassed." They stayed on top of the wall until the black sky started to turn gray then yellow. Naruto and Hinata's heads turned as one at the barely audible sound of running ninja. "Warn the village. I'll hold them off," Naruto growled. The sound ninja in the lead smirked as the walls of Konoha loomed over him. He was going to be the first to enter Konoha and start the massacre. Lord Orochimaru would reward him for his bravery and the ninja's thoughts ceased as both of Naruto's fists slammed into his head and drove him into the ground. The squad that had been following him scattered and Naruto gave chase. Naruto rammed his chakra blades into an enemy before rushing after another. These ninja were smarter than their leader, all scattering in different directions. Naruto summoned a crowd of clones and sent them after scattering enemy. He followed another sound ninja as she dashed away. Naruto burst through a dense patch of bushes and his eyes went wide. There was a mass of enemy ninja waiting for him. Naruto gritted his teeth and threw himself into the enemy swarm. Thunder shook the sky as the first enemy fell to Naruto's fists and blades. He flickered from ninja to ninja as fast as he could, trying to form a one-person barrier between the enemy and Konoha. But more by sheer weight of numbers than anything else, they slowly forced him back. "Having fun?" a raven-haired shinobi asked as he landed next to Naruto, bringing several Enbu squads and a pink-haired kunoichi with him. Naruto glared at Sasuke. "Shut up and help me," he yelled, grabbing a sound ninja by the arm and using him to knock the rest of his squad off their feet. Sasuke's hands followed a well-known pattern and Naruto ducked out of the way. Fire style, fireball jutsu. As the fireball died, the heavens opened and rain poured down on the battle, quickly mixing with the blood of the fallen, turning the ground into bloody mire. Naruto slipped in the mud and the enemy took advantage of his lapse in focus. The wave of sound ninja swamped Naruto, burying him under a black mass of bodies. Sasuke and Sakura stopped in their tracks at a strange feeling. They felt it more than heard it, a deep feral growl. Sasuke realized what was about to happen a second before it did. He just had time to grab Sakura and launch himself out of the firing line, when the pile of ninja were scattered by an explosion of crimson chakra. Naruto emerged from the swarm, eyes blood red, whisker scars widened and chakra covering his body, forming a tail shape. The enemy faltered and this time Naruto pounced on them. He, literally, tore into the ranks, decimating their numbers. Sasuke backed away as the remaining strike force split into three, some coming after him, the others going after Sakura and Naruto. The Uchiha's Sharingan flickered and changed shape, becoming the distinctive Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto happened to look back as a surge of black flames engulfed the ninja. He returned to the battle as the bloodlust of the fox inside him took over again and he charged. Sakura sized up an enemy squad and slammed her fist into the ground. The squad was catapulted into the air as the ground shattered then fell into the canyon Sakura had created. Sasuke appeared at the other end of the gash in the earth. Earth style. Great Mud River. Sasuke yelled over the thunder. The screams of the sound ninja were smothered as they were buried alive. Sakura smashed her fist against an enemy on her left, sending him flying through the trees. Naruto roared as he rushed through the enemy ninja, dispatching them left and right. He jumped and landed on a nearby tree before launching himself through the sound army like a red bullet. Sasuke turned his bloody eyes on a squad trying to sneak up on him. They froze as Tsukiyomi took effect then dropped to the ground. Sakura grabbed a ninja and swung him over her head then into the ground. Naruto's rage cooled as he realized there were no more enemies coming at him. His chakra tail faded and his eyes went back to their normal blue as walked over to Sasuke and Sakura. As if on cue, the rain lessened and the wind dropped. "When did you get the Mangekyo Sharingan?" Naruto demanded of Sasuke. "Back in the Valley of the End, during our second fight when you beat the hell out of me. I used Chidori against you and, technically, I killed you. The only way to unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan is to kill your best friend, but since you came back, I have a different version than Itachi. So far it looks like I won't lose my sai. I don't know, but maybe it's the guilt of killing the best friend that causes the sight loss. Well, now that this is over with, let's go and get ramen." Naruto grinned. "Idiot," Sasuke sighed. A group of 4 ninja watched from a safe distance as the Konoha ninja returned to their village. "Lord Orochimaru will not be pleased," the bulkiest of the 4 muttered. "Damn right he won't, he's gonna be pissed," the only girl started. "Watch your language," the big guy interrupted her. "So what do we do?" The ninja hanging upside down from an overhanging branch asked. "We'll have to take them out," the last of the group muttered. "But brother, last time we fought them we lost." This voice sounded identical to the other, as if he were having a conversation with himself. "Are you forgetting that Lord Orochimaru has given us new powers to slaughter his enemies?" "We had better report," the upside-down ninja said, cracking his 3 sets of knuckles, one after the other. The others nodded in agreement and all vanished. Naruto stretched as he led Sasuke, Sakura and the Anbu members back into Konoha. The group dispersed and Naruto found Hinata waiting for him. He smiled at her as he reached her and held out his hand. Hinata took the offered hand and they walked off together. Naruto yawned as looked for somewhere to sleep. He found a spot under a tree. He led Hinata towards it and sat, leaning against the trunk. Naruto yawned again, closing his eyes, and was soon asleep. His head slipped and rested against Hinata's shoulder. Hinata smiled at Naruto before she also closed her eyes. However, unknown to the pair, they were being watched by a young girl with lavender eyes. Naruto slammed his head against a sound ninja's, then booted him back to what was left of his squad. The remaining ninja turned and fled as Sasuke fired several great dragonfire blasts after them. Neji slammed his open palm against a stubborn sound ninja. He choked and collapsed to the ground. The 3 ninja turned their backs on the destruction they had wreaked and walked back to the village. Naruto couldn't shift the feeling that someone was watching him, Sasuke and Neji, as they walked. He managed to shake his worries. He stretched and rolled his shoulders as the village walls came into view. "Man, Orochimaru isn't letting up," Naruto groaned as his left shoulder cracked. They entered the village and went their own ways. Naruto weaved his way through the ninja. He froze as a scream met his ears. "How the hell did we lose almost 3 entire Anbu squads?" Tsunade screamed as Shizune wisely ducked for cover. Naruto flickered, dodging a chunk of rubble that Tsunade hurled in her anger. The survivors report that they were attacked by a 4-man cell. "Apparently each of the members of the team had a curse mark," Shizune said, still hiding. Naruto decided to follow Shizune's example and moved out of the firing line. He saw Hinata and walked over to her. "Hinata, can I talk to you?" "Somewhere private," Naruto asked her quietly. Hinata nodded and slipped her hand into Naruto's. He led the way through the village until they reached the training grounds. Hinata was puzzled until Naruto started speaking. Hinata, before we become any closer, I want you to know something about me. Hinata looked into Naruto's face. Do you know the story of the nine-tailed fox that attacked the village almost 18 years ago? Hinata nodded. Well, the Yondaime managed to defeat the fox, but at the cost of his life, by sealing it within a newborn baby. Naruto paused. That baby was me. Hinata's eyes were wide as Naruto raised his shirt for the proof, the spiral seal. Naruto dropped his shirt back down and looked away from Hinata. This time it was Hinata who made Naruto look at her. Naruto expected her eyes to be filled with hatred or loathing, but all he could see was her love of him. So that's why the villagers hated you. They thought you were the Nine Tails. Naruto nodded. And during the fight with Sasuke, the fox must have taken control of you to save itself. Naruto swallowed hard. You really don't care that I'm a demon vessel? You are Naruto, and that's all I care about, Hinata whispered, drawing closer. Naruto also came closer to Hinata. She wrapped her arms around his neck as he slid his around her waist. A bird chose that moment to take flight from a nearby tree, scattering cherry blossoms into the slight breeze. Neither Naruto nor Hinata noticed the pink snowstorm as their lips locked. Hinata walked with Neji back to the relatively untouched Hyuga compound, a small smile creasing the corner of her mouth. They entered through the main door and saw Hiyashi waiting for them in the courtyard. Hinata and Neji stopped in front of the Hyuga elder as Hanabi peered out from behind Hiyashi. Hinata, Hanabi tells me she saw you and that fox together. She also said you and he have become close. Hinata shot Hanabi a murderous glare that Hanabi didn't know her sister was capable of. Hiyashi noted Hinata's expression and his frown deepened. Do you even know what he is? Hiyashi demanded. He is Naruto Uzumaki, vessel of the Kyuubi no Kitsune and nothing more. Hiyashi blanched at Hinata's confident words. She sounded so unlike her normal self. He is the monster that tried to destroy Konoha. No, Hinata said in an icy growl. He may have the spirit of the fox sealed in his body, but he is his own person. That boy may look like a human, but underneath he is nothing but a demon. And your Byakugan is special, letting you see these things. Hinata, you are heiress to the Hyuga family. The future of the family rests on your shoulders, and you think that monster is worthy of your affections. I will choose whoever I want to love, Hinata said, folding her arms. Hinata Hyuga, I forbid you to go anywhere near that fox until you see sense. Until your infatuation with that monster is gone. Then the main branch of the Hyuga ends with me. Hinata yelled at her father and stormed off to her room. Hiyashi's visage showed no emotion, but inside he was astonished that Hinata had actually yelled at him. Hinata slammed the door to her room shut and her illusion of strength failed. She sank to her knees, shaking slightly. Hinata couldn't believe she had just yelled at her father. Sasuke launched himself after Naruto. The fox vessel had insisted that he and Neji come with him. Neji came alongside Naruto as they bounded. Naruto, I feel you ought to know that Hiyashi-sama has forbidden Hinata to see you. Naruto almost lost his footing. Why? Naruto asked, stumbling on. He sees you only as the Nine Tails. Like hell I'm going to keep away from her, Naruto muttered. The team landed in the clearing they'd created during the last battle. Neji scanned the area with his Byakugan but found nothing. Sasuke and Neji were about to leave Naruto to his searching but froze as the sound of clapping met their ears. They turned as one to see four figures standing a little way behind them. Sasuke's Sharingan and Neji's Byakugan activated as one, desperate to find a reason why that group was standing before them, but found no genjutsu or any other illusion. The sound four were standing before them. You're dead, Naruto growled. We were dead, Sakin corrected the blonde, past tense. That was a threat, the fox smirked. Why did he resurrect you? Sasuke glared at the group. More importantly, how did Orochimaru resurrect you? Neji demanded. Reanimation? You see, Lord Orochimaru was rather fond of us, and when you killed us that really pissed him off. Tayuya started. Watch that foul mouth, Jirobo grunted. Shut up fat ass, Tayuya replied, then turned back to the Konoha trio and continued, so he cloned our bodies, then brought our souls back with the reanimation jutsu. He used our cloned bodies as the sacrifices for the summoning. The result was us, fully revived and alive. But you're forgetting Lord Orochimaru's gifts, Kidomaru added. Yes, Lord Orochimaru has granted us greater strength in order to defeat Konoha, Yukon told the Leaf Trio. Naruto had been discreetly readying himself for a pounce and chose that moment to lunge. The sound four vanished, scattering in opposite directions. "We shall battle another time," Sakon's voice floated from nowhere. Naruto cursed as Sasuke joined him. "Looks like your instincts were right on the money." That's just peachy," Tsunade growled. Naruto was ready to duck in case she threw something, but there was little space to do it in. He, Neji, Sakura, Shizune, Kakashi, Jiraiya, and Shikamaru were squeezed into the tent Tsunade was using as a makeshift HQ. Naruto had barged in, heedless of Neji's warnings, while Tsunade had been briefing them on their patrol routes. "Well, at least we know what we're up against," Sakura said. "Not quite," Neji said. "They mentioned that Orochimaru had enhanced their abilities." "Could this day get any worse?" Tsunade asked the canvas ceiling. "Lady Tsunade," an Anbu captain yelled as he burst into the tent, "we've lost contact with Anbu Group 5. "I had to ask," Tsunade muttered. "That's the squad Hinata was attached to," Sakura gasped. "Sakura, Shikamaru, Kakashi-sensei, on my tail," Naruto yelled and flickered out of the tent. Hinata led the Anbu team through the forest, bounding from tree to tree. She paused for a second as she thought she saw something in the leaves ahead and activated her Byakugan. There was nothing ahead but cries from behind made her spin around. 3 of the 6 Anbu were tied to the tree trunks by what looked like spider's silk. The nearest Anbu screamed as a gold arrow appeared out of nowhere and punched through his chest. Another Anbu's yells were silenced by more webs splattering across his mouth and nose. Hinata could see he was suffocating but couldn't do a thing as threads swept through the trees, lassoing one of the 2 remaining Anbu around the neck and pulling him upwards into the canopy. The last Anbu bound to the tree was dispatched by 2 sickle-shaped blades rocketed out of the leaf cover and buried themselves in his chest. The last Anbu didn't know what hit her as Kidomaru appeared behind her and slit her throat with a blade made of his gold armor. Hinata saw the Anbu fall to the forest floor below as Kidomaru advanced on her, a blade in each of his 6 hands. Hinata moved into the stance of the gentle fist and Kidomaru backed away. She lunged at the spider ninja but he parried with one of his blades and slashed at her. Hinata managed to avoid the first blade but the second cut into her arm, then the third hit her leg. Hinata kicked away from Kidomaru but he advanced on her. Hinata let him get closer, then pivoted on her left foot and created the dome shield of palms rotation. Kidomaru was sent flying but he quickly recovered. Hinata knew this enemy was too strong for her to take alone. She turned and ran with the spider ninja hot on her heels. As Hinata started to pull away from Kidomaru, her feet were pulled from under her by a rope of web. Hinata found herself falling through the branches until she hit the ground. She was dazed for a second and could only lie there on her back, but she felt Kidomaru pinning her down. Hinata tried to push the spider ninja off, but Kidomaru was stronger than her and had more arms. "I think I'll have some fun with you before I kill you," he hissed. Hinata screamed as she felt Kidomaru ripped her jacket off. "Get your hands off her!" Naruto yelled as he materialized a few feet away and charged. Kidomaru didn't have time to move before Naruto's chakra-fueled kick slammed into him. The spider ninja was sent flying across the clearing and slammed into a solid-looking tree, but smashed right through it. Naruto turned his attention to Hinata as Sakura, Kakashi and Shikamaru appeared behind him. "Hinata, are you alright?" Naruto asked, voice soft as he knelt next to her. She nodded and latched onto the front of his jacket. Naruto reluctantly made her let go and used his jacket to cover her. Naruto looked at Kakashi. The white-haired ninja almost took a step backwards at the look of hatred on his face, while Sakura couldn't help uttering a squeak of fear. "Kakashi-sensei," Naruto growled, an animal note in his voice. "Take Hinata back to Konoha and have Granny Tsunade look after her. I'll join you when I can." Naruto stood again and turned to the spot where Kidomaru had been to find him gone. Kakashi picked up Hinata and vanished. Sakura and Shikamaru backed away from the enraged fox vessel, knowing he wouldn't need any help. Kidomaru looked on from his treetop vantage point, his heightened vision allowing him to see every detail of the scene below. He froze in fear as his eyes met Naruto's. The spider ninja could have sworn he was looking into the eyes of the nine-tailed fox rather than another person. Kidomaru shook himself and lined up the arrow in his bow with Naruto's chest. He waited a second and loosed the arrow. Naruto dodged the arrow. He charged and vanished just before he reached Kidomaru. Kidomaru felt himself being hoisted off his feet and thrown towards the ground. He managed to land without injury and looked at Sakura and Shikamaru. Why aren't they helping? The spider ninja asked himself. Kidomaru yelled as Naruto's fist slammed into one of his left elbows, the gold armor and underlying bone shattered. Naruto only vaguely realized what he was doing as he pummeled the spider ninja. Naruto ducked Kidomaru's other arms and planted his foot on another elbow, this time on the other side. He kicked upwards and brought his feet down hard on Kidomaru's shoulders. The spider ninja's gold armor may as well have been tissue paper for all the good it was doing. Naruto landed, pulled a kunai from his pouch and buried it in the spider ninja's second-last elbow joint. He vanished in sand and reappeared on the other side of Kidomaru. Naruto grabbed Kidomaru's last working arm and forced it in the wrong direction, then leapt away. His rage ebbed enough to see all 6 of Kidomaru's arms were hanging limply at his sides. Naruto found the arrow meant for him in his hand. He rushed forward and rammed it into Kidomaru's stomach. Naruto backed away and summoned 4 clones. They dashed forwards. Kidomaru couldn't react fast enough. He was sent flying upwards. His eyes widened as he saw the real Naruto coming at him from above. Naruto formed a Sunarashi Rasengan in his right hand and roared as he rammed the chakra ball into Kidomaru's chest. The pair crashed back to earth. As they hit, the ground under Kidomaru shattered and a dome sandstorm rose, hiding them from view. The dust and wind cleared. Shikamaru saw Naruto emerge, eyes practically glowing red. They faded back to blue as he reached Sakura and Shikamaru. Sakura made the mistake of looking at Kidomaru's body and wished she hadn't. She wasn't even sure what was left could be called a body. Without a word they leapt into the trees and headed back to Konoha. Naruto entered the village, followed by Shikamaru and Sakura. He saw Kakashi and headed towards him. The blonde didn't even need to ask. Kakashi knew what he was thinking and he pointed towards a smaller medical tent. Naruto swept towards the tent, Shizune standing outside. He saw Hiashi, Hanabi and Neji also making a beeline for the tent, but he was closer. Tsunade left the tent as he reached it. She's shaken and she has a couple of scratches, but there's no lasting damage, Tsunade said, then stepped aside to let him in. Naruto bolted inside as Hiashi caught up to him. Tsunade and Shizune blocked his path. How dare you let that fox anywhere near my daughter? I'll let it go that you mentioned the demon this time, but that fox saved your daughter, Tsunade ground out. I don't even want to think about what would have happened if he hadn't been there. Hiashi faltered. That still doesn't change what he is. He is Naruto Uzumaki, a person with the same feelings, fears and ambitions as the rest of us. Hiashi reined in his temper. Tsunade allowed him time to control his emotions, desperately wanting to send Hiashi flying across the village. Hiashi controlled himself and pushed past Tsunade and Shizune into the tent. Hinata was sitting on one of the folding cots and Naruto was sitting next to her. Naruto had his arms around Hinata and she was holding onto his shirt, still covered with Naruto's jacket. Hinata's face was hidden by her hair as she had buried her face in his shoulder. Naruto growled a fox growl as he saw Hiashi enter. Hinata's occasional quiet sob was all that broke the tense silence. Boy, after my daughter has calmed, I want to speak with at the Hyuga compound, Hiashi said and swept out of the tent. Naruto knelt on the floor in front of Hiashi. Naruto guessed the room in the Hyuga mansion was used for training due to the lack of furniture. Hiashi had locked his eyes on Naruto as he knelt down. Naruto was sure Hiashi wasn't blinking. Firstly, I want to thank you for saving Hinata, Hiashi said. Naruto stared. You heard me correctly. Naruto was convinced Hiashi was reading his mind. Now tell me, what is Hinata to you? The question caught Naruto off guard and his mind went blank. What would you do to protect her? Hiashi asked. I would defend her with my life, Naruto said as the words popped into his head. Hiashi stood and made to leave but stopped at the door. You have proved yourself capable of keeping your word, so I will allow your relationship with my daughter to continue? He paused, for the time being. Hiashi left without another word. Naruto stood up shakily and managed to get to the door. He took 2 steps out of the room and was almost knocked off his feet. Hinata wrapped her arms around him and held onto him as tightly as she could. Naruto hugged her back. Hinata eventually released her death grip on Naruto and they headed off to find somewhere quiet. The Konoha 12 with their senseis and the Sand Trio stood before Tsunade and Shizune in the HQ tent. The Sound 4's reappearance has thrown an unexpected wrench into our works. Each member on their own is a force to be reckoned with. We must remove them before they can cause more damage. Naruto has already taken care of Kidomaru. That only leaves Tayuya, Jirobo and Sakin and Yukon to be dealt with. Lee raised his hand. Lady Tsunade. If I may. Tsunade nodded her approval for Lee to speak. There was another member of the Sound 4. The one with the ability to manipulate his bones. Kimimaro. Well noted, my youthful student, Guy said proudly. Yes, well noted. Tsunade agreed. Since there are ninja here who have fought the Sound 4 before, they will be charged with assembling teams to take out the enemy have fought previously. You may choose anyone who is best suited to deal with their selected enemy's skills. Shikamaru groaned, Choji gulped and Kiba shuddered. As we don't know if Kimimaro has been revived, Lee will also assemble a team. Tsunade continued. Shikamaru, Kiba, Choji, Lee. I will expect a report as to your choice of teammates before you are deployed. Remember that the Sound 4 said they have been enhanced by Orochimaru, so be on your guard. Dismissed. The shinobi and kunoichi filled out of the tent and dispersed, going back to their various duties. Your first command, my youthful student, Guy bellowed as he and Lee walked away. This is a momentous day. I will not disappoint you, Guy-sensei. Lee yelled back. Naruto groaned as he and Sasuke went looking for food. I hope I'm not on his team, Sasuke muttered as the pair reached the mess tent. Same here, Naruto agreed. After Sasuke and Naruto had gotten food, they found an out-of-the-way spot to eat. Hey Sasuke, Naruto said around a mouthful of food. What actually happened in the Valley of the End during our second fight? Sasuke stopped eating. You don't remember? Naruto shook his head. The fox took control, so I don't know what happened. The simple version is you went 3 tails and beat the hell out of me. They fell silent again, Naruto's guilt stopping him eating. Sasuke noted his expression. In hindsight, I think I needed some sense beaten into me. He gave Naruto a small smile. Naruto's face brightened slightly and he started eating again. Sasuke looked up into the pale sky as he finished his meager rations. Once I'd healed, Tsunade tossed me in a cell and threatened me with punishments beyond imagination. Sasuke continued, many involving letting the villagers loose on me. As you can understand, after my desertion I wasn't best popular. But she eventually decided just to let the Konoha 12 minus you at me. Sasuke shuddered. I've never known Sakura to yell so loud. But Lee was by far the worst. If I heard, youth, on more time I would have screamed. Sasuke stopped talking and looked back down as he heard someone walking towards them. Shikamaru was standing before them. I've started to assemble my team, he told Sasuke and Naruto, and you're with me, Sasuke. Sasuke nodded in reply. Shikamaru turned to Naruto. Just a friendly warning, Lee is thinking about putting you on his team. Naruto groaned. Well, at least you escaped, Sasuke. Hiashi entered the council room of the Hyuga compound and shut the door behind him. He saw the council had already assembled as he sat in front of them. Hiashi, the elderly head of the council, wheezed. It has come to our attention that your eldest is perusing a relationship not of your choosing. That is true, Hiashi answered. We have also heard that the relationship is with the 9 tails. Is that also true? The woman next to the elderly Hyuga asked. Yes, it is. How could you allow the Hyuga name to be connected with that monster? Another member of the council demanded. Hinata's actions are beyond my control. She has threatened that if she is not allowed to peruse her relationship, then the Hyuga main branch ends with her. But you have another daughter, she could carry on the bloodline, the female council member voiced. And break with almost 300 years of tradition, the eldest choked. Only the eldest may carry on the family line. What about the branch child? Neji, the last member, asked. Are you determined to undermine the traditions of this house? The old man yelled. Hiashi remained silent as the council continued to argue. Enough. The leader silenced the rest of the council before turning to Hiashi. What is the state of the connection between your daughter and the demon? They are close, Hiashi answered curtly, and he has stated that he will protect Hinata with his life. We cannot allow the relationship to continue. We will not allow an outsider, let alone that monster, into the main branch. And if the pairing produces any offspring are born, we have no idea what effect the demon will have on them. The last thing we want is demons with the Byakugan, the female member of the council muttered. I believe there is only one course of action open to us, the council leader said in a grim voice. We must bind her Byakugan and sever all ties with her. Then Hanabi will be your only daughter and rightful heir to the main branch. Hiyashi was shocked. True, Hinata was in love with a monster in his eyes, but she was still his daughter, but he was powerless against the Hyuga council. You may leave, Hiyashi, the council leader said, breaking Hiyashi's trance. Hiyashi stood, bowed and left the council rooms. He walked away down the corridor, unaware that Hinata was hidden in an alcove nearby. And she had heard every word. Tsunade put down Kiba's report on his team. He'd wasted on time on deciding who he would choose. Kankuro, Tenten and Ino. She had to admit it was an unusual combination, but it made sense. Her thoughts were interrupted by Choji entering the tent. I have my team ready, he said as he handed her a sheet of paper. Good, Tsunade said, reading the report. She raised an eyebrow. You've also got an odd combination. Lady Tsunade. Shizune called as she appeared in the doorway. Tayuya has been sighted. Shikamaru's team is already en route. Good. Have medical ninja on standby for their return. At that exact moment Shikamaru, with Neji and Tamari behind him, landed in a clearing to find the red-headed member of the Sound 4 waiting for them. I've been wanting a rematch with you, she growled at Shikamaru. The Leaf Shinobi and Sand Kunoichi fanned out, moving into their classic attack stances. Tamari brandished her fan and Neji moved into the gentle fist stance. Tayuya planted her hand on the ground and in a puff of smoke her demon summons appeared. Shikamaru studied the demons as the smoke cleared. Still 3 of them, each still looks like the last time, but they could have more hidden abilities. Tayuya raised her flute to her lips as the pattern of her curse mark spread and the demons advanced. Tamari looked at the nearest demon and swung her fan at. The monster howled as it was battered by the wind. Its howls continued after the wind died. Tamari launched himself backwards as the demon lunged at her. Neji fired off a chakra blast into the demon that was bearing down on him. The monster shrugged off the chakra and raised both its hands over its head. Neji dodged the massive fists and backed away. What are these things? He demanded. These are the demons that she controls with her flute, Shikamaru replied. Don't let them get too close. You don't need to get close anymore. Tayuya yelled and her tune changed. A new combination. Shikamaru realized, be ready for anything. The demons launched themselves to the edges of the clearing and air around them rippled as the new tune filled the air. Tayuya paused for breath, pyramidal wall of darkness. Shadows spread between the demons creating a barrier around the Konoha team. The wall spread upwards, forming a pyramid that shut out the sunlight. Shikamaru was caught off guard by something slamming into him and knocking him off his feet. Temari's fan was grabbed by hands made of the shadows and they tried to pull it from her, but she refused to let go. Is this genjutsu? Tamari asked. No, as far as I can tell, this is real, Neji replied. The shadows parted to reveal Tayuya. Inside this pyramid, the shadows obey my every whim, the redhead said. Then the darkness hit her again. Can you learn to see in the dark? Neji, can you see her? Barely, I'm having to rely on what I can't see to find her. Neji ducked as a shadow lunged at him. There's a void in the darkness where she is, but she keeps moving. Neji felt the shadows trying to swamp him. He pivoted, going into a rotation, but the shadow hands grabbed him and tied him down. He smirked. There's a finite amount of material in here. Neji called to Tayuya. And to attack you must use the shadows hiding you. Shikamaru, she's 30 feet dead ahead. Sasuke now. Shikamaru yelled. A barrage of fireballs erupted from the underneath Tayuya, forcing her to duck out of the way. Sasuke burst out of the shadows and his fist slammed into Tayuya's stomach, sending her crashing into the middle of the clearing. Nice try, morons, but you wasted your energy, Tayuya growled as she got to her feet. Did I? Sasuke asked, in mock puzzlement. Tayuya realized the pyramid barrier and her demons were gone. She looked wildly around and saw Shikamaru kneeling in front of an unrolled scroll. Since you came back, I decided your demons would be the perfect test subjects for this new sealing jutsu. The only problem is I haven't figured out how to unseal anything yet. Tayuya screamed and her skin turned gray and horns appeared on her head. She raised her flute again and let fly one long note that echoed around the ninja. making their ears and heads ache. Shikamaru covered his ears in a desperate attempt to shut out the noise. Sasuke lunged, feet first at Tayuya, but she warped and vanished. He dodged back to the rest of the team. Clever, using that note to hide your attack, Shikamaru noted. Stop admiring the enemy, Tamari yelled. The ground under Shikamaru collapsed and he fell into an endless tunnel as Tamari was wrapped in trees that grew around her, one branch around her neck. Neji was up to his knees in marsh before he knew what was happening as thorny vines ensnared Sasuke, the thorns burying themselves in his skin. Sasuke yelled as the vines tightened, pulling his arms in a direction they weren't supposed to go. His Sharingan pierced the illusion, allowing him to see the vague outline of Tayuya. Sasuke glared at Tayuya through the illusion's haze. She stared as Sasuke fought against the vines binding him. The Uchiha managed to get his feet onto the ground and fought against the vines' grip harder. The shape that was Tayuya rushed at him, probably with a kunai drawn. At the last second before she could slit his throat, Sasuke lashed out with his knee, slamming his foot into Tayuya's jaw. She staggered backwards as Sasuke stood, oblivious to the thorns. You call this genjutsu? Sasuke called to her, and the illusion shattered. Shikamaru, Tamari and Neji got unsteadily to their feet. Tayuya snarled and lunged at Sasuke, kunai raised. Your last mistake, Sasuke growled. He blinked and his Sharingan changed to its Mangekyu form again. Tayuya's world's colors inverted and she found she couldn't move. Sasuke appeared before her, he slowly advanced and 3 more figures appeared behind him. Tayuya recognized them as her own summons. Sasuke stopped. Each of the demons passed him and closed around Tayuya. For the next 3 days you're at their mercy, Sasuke smirked. All Tayuya could do was scream as the demons attacked. In the real world, Tayuya choked, eyes growing dull and crashed to the ground. Her momentum still carried her forward, her form coming to rest at Sasuke's feet. 1 down, Sasuke muttered. Probably 3 to go, Neji finished. Naruto ducked through the doorway of the medical tent and looked around. He saw Hinata and crossed the tent to her. The latest casualties were stretched out on the folding cots with medical ninja were tending to them. Naruto filled through the tent until he found an empty bed and sat on it. Hinata left the casualty she'd healed. She turned to the next bed and jumped as she realized it was Naruto. Naruto, why are you here? Naruto clutched at his heart, gasped for breath and collapsed backwards into the cot. I need the kiss of life, or better still just a kiss, he chuckled. Naruto, this is no time to be messing around, Hinata scolded. Naruto's sharp eyes noted the redness in Hinata's normally pale eyes. Hinata, something wrong? He asked as he stood up. She shook her head, bustling around the tent, trying to look busy. Naruto grabbed her wrist and pulled her gently but firmly away from the other medical ninja. What's wrong? Naruto demanded. Nothing, Hinata replied, trying to pull away. Hinata, something is bothering you. You're not doing yourself any favors by denying it. I'm fine, Naruto. Hinata tried to sound normal but Naruto still wouldn't believe her. The blonde caught Hinata off guard by grabbing and hugging her close to him. I'm not letting go until you tell me what's bugging you. Hinata felt her eye filling with tears again and buried her face in Naruto's shoulder. Naruto waited patiently, holding Hinata's shaking form as she continued to sob. Eventually Hinata ran out of tears and looked up at Naruto. Naruto loosened his grip on her and wiped the last tear off Hinata's face with his thumb. Now, what's the matter? Hinata's voice was almost inaudible as she spoke. The Hyuga Council called a meeting with my father. Somehow they found out about us. Hinata teared up again. They're saying that if we stay together, they'll bind my Byakugan and disown me. Hinata expected an outburst from Naruto but he went quiet. She looked up into his face and gasped. Sakura chose that moment to look up from her patient and she saw Naruto. Even from the other side of the tent, Naruto's feelings were abundantly clear. The anger in his eyes and his lips curled into a snarl made Sakura think he was going to go 4 tails. She was about to go over to the pair when Naruto controlled his anger and looked at Hinata again. How can they do that to you? It's tradition. If a female member of the main branch marries outside the family, they seal her Byakugan. And your father is just going to let them disown you? He only sees you as the fox and Hanabi's always been his favorite. If I didn't think it'd hurt you, I'd go and beat some sense into the Hyuga Council and your father. That wouldn't do any good, Hinata muttered, burying her face in Naruto's shoulder again. An idea occurred to Naruto. Hinata, what if you and I just vanished? They can't seal your Byakugan if they can't find you. Hinata looked up again. But if I leave, I'll be a missing nin, and where would we go? If we talk to Granny Tsunade, she'll understand. We just vanish, here one day then gone before anyone knows what happened. Where would we go? Suna, Gaara, Temari and Kankuro are practically family, they won't turn you away. I doubt the council will let me hang around after Orochimaru's gone anyway. Hinata didn't get a chance to think Naruto's plan over as Naruto took hold of her wrist and dragged her out of the tent. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.